We knew the GOP brand was in shambles, but now we have proof. A just released NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows the party's favorability ratings is at 30%, close to a 10-year low. Well, I gotta say it's no wonder the GOP is in full denial. The RNC chairman, who's been leading the downward spiral, says, quote, "The debate calendar is something we're going to look at when it comes to fixing what went wrong this election." The debate calendar? What about policy?
This is not a committee to recommend policy changes to the leadership in the legislature. We have a platform, but I do think that messaging plays a role, and I think candidate recruitment, what to say and how to say it, and I think we can inspire with love.
Well, all we need is love. Forget policy. But failed Senate candidate Richard Murdoch really takes the cake. Remember him? He argued that pregnancy from rape is something God intended to happen. Yet, he's blaming his loss on false accusation Democrats and the liberal media churned up to distract voters. Oh, yeah, nothing at all to do with those rape comments. The GOP's problem is learning that the road to recovery only begins with the first step of admitting you have a problem. We're still waiting for that part. Joining me now is Margie O'Mara, Democratic strategist, and Alicia Menendez, host and producer for HuffPost Live. Thank you both for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you, Rev. Good evening, Reverend.
Alicia, let me start with you. Do the Republicans understand why their brand is in free fall?
I mean, apparently not. They're talking about messaging and love when what they really need to do is talk about policies, talk about the fact that in Washington right now they're sticking to this not lowering the tax rate for the wealthiest Americans. And then across the country we see a variety of misshapen policies. In Ohio, going after Planned Parenthood. In Pennsylvania, just today you have the governor saying that he won't set up an Obamacare exchange in his state. In Michigan, we see the Republican legislature passing 2 different right-to-work laws. I mean, all across the country, we are seeing that they are sticking to the policies that delivered these numbers in the first place.
Margie, you're a strategist, and branding is also how people get in their head certain images. And in the new NBC poll collected, the most popular word or phrase used to describe each party was as follows. For the Republican Party, the most popular 3 were bad, weak, negative. For the Democrats, they were for the people and working class. That's very, very indicative of image and branding and how people relate to just the image of each party.
Absolutely. I mean, at this rate, you're going to have the Republican Party approach Watergate levels in terms of their brands. And it's a brand that's going to the dogs. And that's really an insult to dogs because Seamus and Checkers would have made a more popular ticket this time around. I think it's important for a lot of these candidates to think about how do they learn from these experiences? How do they learn from these defeats rather than simply blame voters, blame their opponents, blame the media? Really look inward. And if they're not doing that, then they're learning really the absolute wrong lesson from this election because voters are looking for policies that they agree with. They're also looking for candidates who are fighting for them, not fighting each other.
Yeah, and Alicia, they're facing all of this with the president doing extremely well. He's sitting on a 53% approval rating, his highest in 3 years. He also has the first positive economic job rating since October of 2009. And it's like they can't figure it out. The Koch brothers, who pledged $100 million to defeat Obama, are now postponing their annual post-election meeting, writing, "We are working hard to understand the election results and based on that analysis to re-examine our vision and the strategies and capabilities required for success. Although some of the needed changes are already evident, it will be several months before the state data necessary to complete this analysis is available." several months?
Yeah, I mean, it's not state data, it's demographic data. We know who came out and voted for President Obama. We know who came out and voted for Democrats. And we know that the Republicans' message right now does not resonate with this new body of voters. And so they need to be looking at that. They need to be changing their policies on everything from tax policy to immigration. And we still have yet to see whether or not they're willing to do that. And I think the message for Democrats, because, you know, those numbers sort of show you this is how Democrats got their groove back, is that when you lean into progressive policies like Obamacare, you can run and win, and that's just as important for Democrats to take away as it is for Republicans.
And then, Margie, as Democrats are leaning, as Alicia says, toward progressive ideas in politics, the outrage continues on the other side. Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, actually compared marriage equality and the marriage equality debate to the Civil War. Listen to this.
Slavery was outlawed by a constitutional amendment. Go watch Lincoln. Great movie.
Yeah.
The people decided. The question for us is who should decide these things? Should it be a handful of judges, or it should be the people themselves? And I come out on the side of the people themselves. Different people will look at it differently, but slavery was outlawed by a constitutional amendment. If you want to propose a constitutional amendment legalizing same-sex marriage and it passes, that's the law of the land.
I mean, do they know these kind of statements only move them further and further to the fringe?
There are a lot of different examples like this, Reverend. I mean, whether it's gay marriage, whether it's more salient right this moment is the fiscal cliff, where they're talking about digging their heels in to protect the 1%. I mean, talk about a brand. Their brand now is defending tax cuts for the very top of our country, and also digging their heels in on things like gay marriage, where people are now moving to the left, or on comprehensive immigration reform, people are moving as far to the left, or even on things like birth control that 99% of the electorate of women have used. I mean, it doesn't really matter what issue you're looking at. Republicans are now finding themselves being pulled far to the right, and part of that is whether you have folks who may challenge Speaker Boehner for the speakership, you also have folks who are going to primary senators around the country.
It's going all over the place. But let me ask this before I run out of time, Alicia. One of the rising stars at the Republican convention and being touted for 2016 is Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey. He sat down with Barbara Walters, who began asking the hard questions he may face in 2016. Listen to this.
There are people who say that you couldn't be president because you're so heavy. What do you say to them?
No, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what the basis for that is.
I think they are worried about your health.
Well, I've done this job pretty well, and I think people watched me for the last number of weeks in Hurricane Sandy doing 18-hour days and getting right back up the next day and still being just as effective in the job, so I don't really think that would be a problem.
Having struggled with my weight myself, I am sympathetic to what the governor is saying. At the same time, I think it's very legitimate for voters to worry about his health. I've talked to big Chris Christie fans in New Jersey who say, I can't vote for him for president because I'm really voting for the VP. I'm worried about him going into office, having a heart attack, and someone else becoming president. So I do think it's a legitimate question, but right now you're right. He's having his sweetheart moment, and everything changes the minute this is an actual primary, and he has to talk about policy instead of talking about, you know.
Well, I've been heavy and I've been lighter. Now I'm lighter, but I was heavy a lot longer than I was lighter, so I won't pick on the governor on this one. Policy, though, Governor, you and I could fight about. Margie O'Mara and Alicia Menendez, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.